We are live.
All right. Thank you everyone for joining us. This is the deliberations for the Zoning Board of Appeals hearing this evening, May 7th, 2020. During deliberations, zoning board members review cases and take action by voting. There is no participation by applicants or the public. And just as a reminder to all applicants that are currently watching, there is of course a permitting process. So regardless of what happens tonight, within, as was said earlier, about 15 business days, you will receive a written notice of decision outlining the decision based on the standards. So we will get started. We will be going in order of the cases. So we will be getting with case number 1, which is 55 Rockwood Street. So it might be a benefit if depending on how the board wants to do this, you can go around and share some thoughts, or you can speak about it a little bit and see what people's thoughts are based on the standards.
I think let's try to start without talking over each other. General way we usually do it, and let's see how that works out.
Okay.
So, but I can still go in order. Jim, what are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are, it's unfortunate we still don't have a decision on how we're going to be handling these things or what the new rules are going to be. So here's what I'm thinking. We have an existing spot that they want to go up, was it 13.5 feet? They want to vastly increase the size of the signs. And one side will be static and the other side is going to be the digital. I don't have a huge problem with this case. It does bother me that we're not only going up higher, we're going wider, but I can understand why the size would increase or what they're looking for, since they are so far located from 490. I'm pretty much up in the air right now, so I'm going to listen to what the others say.
Before we go any further, I just want to mention, I want to speak to something Jim said. So you mentioned where the regulations are going, and there was some public comment about it. I encourage you to remember that what we have is the current code. What may come down the road of new regulations is of course unforeseen. So I just remind you that the board is of course charged with reviewing the case as submitted with the current standards based on the existing code.
I understand.
Lashana?
I understand that as well, that we need to make a decision based on what the current standards is. I too don't have a huge issue with it. I mean, the location is in an area where, we know that there are other, in proximity where there are other signs. I do appreciate the fact that, with possible, and I know, Matt, you just told us not to talk about any future.
I did.
However, I just want to, I know I'm going to go against it, but, with them providing some alternates, meaning they're willing to get rid of other signage, which will segue into possible, things that the board may not have to deal with if and when there is changes to the code as it relates to pole signage and things like that. And that's it for me.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And my response, yes, but just keep in mind too what the variances are for. So there's sort of different variances. There's obviously the switch to digital. There's the size, of course, but there's also the height. So just keep in mind that you're able to break those things out as well. Historically, the board has reviewed these things in context and said, well, we're comfortable with the digital, but we think the height is inappropriate or something to that effect. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about it, not just as much about the digital, but the impacts on height and the size as well.
Let me just add something. So I think what some of the
comments were some of the standards that we are proposing to have in a new code. And you've seen some of that in a very preliminary form, and that such things as the dwell time, how long a message has to remain, the brightness issues, the fact that you can't have a sequential message, and there's a number of those things. And those are all things that you can and you have in the past impose as conditions of if you approve the signs, that you can still impose those requirements and to mitigate the impact of the digital sign. So although they have not been adopted in our zoning code, this is information that you've been provided with over the last couple of years, actually, when you've approved these, and you have imposed some of those requirements as conditions of approval. So.
Lorraine?
So,
Well, I kind of feel like that I don't have a huge issue, but my issue is the height. And in looking at the different heights, 5, 10, 13.5, I don't really see a huge issue. I mean, I don't see a big difference from 10 to 13.5. So, you know, why can't it be just 10? Why does it have to be 13.5? I think this is the sequential issues and the fact that the one is going to be static. I think that's very relevant. But I guess my issue is the fact that it's going to be looming so high, not in accordance to what has been done before. That's all. I don't know of a sign that's 13.5 in height. So, you know, it's not huge for me, but I'm just saying that why does it have to be that high? Just looking at what they've proposed, it doesn't, even with trees, full foliage, it doesn't seem to me that it's impaired that much. Anyhow, that's how I feel. I don't know, whatever.
Cora?
I kind of agree with Lorraine. I think that with the size increase, it works at 5 feet, it works at 10, and I'm not offended at 13.5. So if we go bigger, then I mean, you know.
Joe?
Sorry about that. Yeah, so here's where I'm at with it. I'm more leaning towards a lesser relief of from 13.5 to 10. I don't think it made that much of a difference when Matt was going through their slides, and you could see him flip from 10 to 13.5. I didn't think it was thanks, Matt. The fact that they were going on, like, I don't know, nearly 100% increase in size. Yeah, that one right there. See, that's they go to 10. Yeah. So, and the fact that they're like, did they say 500 feet off of 490 there? I think they said they were, but something like that. That the size didn't really. Normally, I would say that's crazy to ask for 100% increase, but the fact that they're so far back from expressway, I don't have that big of a problem. But I'm leaning more towards the 10 feet than the 13.5.
I just want to mention too, because you guys have all mentioned height at this point, and I think everyone has spoken. They did mention, bear with me, I'm going to try to get back to a page here that I was thinking of. This street here, there is no photo of it, but they did say it will be visible. The back of the structure is going to be visible with what's being proposed. So to your point about height, that's certainly a consideration in terms of height, both from this is the dead end of Yarmouth Road, which is an R1 district. So it's the most highly regulated, most low intense district. So to introduce that new structure is certainly worth warranting this conversation, as well as from Hoyt Place. And keep in mind too, in terms of the essential character of the area, you guys just recently approved a fairly adjacent one, so 1881 East Avenue. So just keep that in mind too. There will be the introduction of a new one. So that really speaks to the, it speaks to the area and the character of it, and the introduction of a new one. So enlarging an existing one too, I think would play into that.
Yeah, I'm just gonna repeat a little bit what Matt said, and when we asked them to come back with the photographs and the photo simulations, we asked them to do the photo simulations of the different heights from the highway. I don't think we asked them to do the same thing from the neighborhood. So we have photographs of the existing signs from the residential neighborhoods, but we don't have photo simulations of the varying heights from the residential neighborhood. So
The letter is up, photographs of the proposed billboard from nearby residentially zoned properties.
yeah, at what's there now, but we don't have the same exercise that they did with the increased heights. So just, keep that in mind. And I don't think we asked them for it.
No,
I
no, we
don't think
did.
we were, huh?
No, I was gonna
Photographs
say,
of
I
the
thought the exact same thing during the hearing.
Yeah.
We asked
I
for
don't think we're clear. I'm sorry.
If you look at the screen now, number one, photographs of the proposed billboard from nearby residentially zoned properties. They submitted photographs of the existing billboard.
Yeah. Oh,
The letter that's on the screen
Yeah,
was the
you're
letter
right.
that was mailed to the applicant. So they did submit a simulation of graduated heights.
Yeah.
But not for number two,
yeah.
but I don't believe number one.
And I guess we didn't make it clear that how graduated heights from the nearby residential
I see what you're
properties
saying.
would look. Yeah, we didn't really make that clear, I'm afraid.
Well, we did ask for not graduated heights, but
No.
we asked for the 13.5 feet, what it would look
True.
like.
And we don't have that, right? That's not in
Yeah.
here. Okay.
No.
It's interesting.
We offered testimony that it would be seen, but there were no photos.
Yeah, I'm okay with this one. I agree with Joe totally. I'm more aligned with the lesser relief at 10 feet, and I'm fine with the sign going digital as well.
Let me ask you this, because we don't know this from the applicant. So I'm going to make an assumption here, and I could be wrong, of course, but there may be some structural component behind their request for 13.5. I don't know how that works in terms of the pole. So I don't know if the board wants to, and Johanna weigh in here, if they can do an approval with lesser relief up to a certain height, because maybe the structure wouldn't allow them to do 10, but they could do 7 or something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you could do that.
Just because I don't know if the structure would allow them to do that. I don't know if their request was related to.
Well, I mean, you don't think they need an entirely new structure for this? I'm not quite understanding what your concern is.
My concern is if they're using the existing structure that maybe
are.
they're requesting 13.5. Yeah, that they're using, if they're requesting 13.5, it's because of what it can support. But that may not be true, and you can, decide from there. So I'm going to pull back up the simulations. So this is the existing billboard on the right here. It's highlighted in yellow. You can see on the screen. So it is visible from 490. Oops, and then this is it at 5 feet as well as the enlarged. And this is the digital one. This is it at 10 feet and then 13.5 feet. So the code requires 23. So keep that in mind. It's a substantial request.
So I guess I'll start with, let's take it in pieces first. And let's do the digital
and size.
So I think the most important, and think about them both in the same way, but is everybody okay with the digital, I guess?
Yeah.
I'm all set with it.
Yes.
I'm all set with that.
Okay, so it seems that height is the concern.
What about the size too? Because the increase in size. So the proposal includes 672 square feet. Where 236 is allowed. So they are planning on increasing it. Currently the billboards are 378 square foot each side, and the applicant is requesting to go from 378 to 672.
Well, I think we may need to adjust that, or we need to allow some type of lesser relief if we're gonna reduce the height. So it looks, I'm assuming so it looks proportional, but you know, someone else wanna chime in to kind of give insight on that?
I'm under the impression that 672 is the normal size for a billboard from what we've heard in previous testimony for this case and other cases.
Matt,
Same
do you-
assumption as well.
Matt, do you remember what the size was that got approved at the Brighton? The old Brighton, or at Perry's, I should say.
For the new one,
The one, yeah, the new one that got
I can tell
approved.
you. I can tell you. Give me 1 second.
And I can tell you that the standard 14 by 48 billboard, that is pretty much the standard highway size billboard, and that comes to the 672.
And if they were to lower the height, they wouldn't be changing the proportions of the sign.
Right.
They have their, I believe, like 4 standard sizes, so they would be shifting the
Right.
whole thing down. a little
Right,
bit.
right.
In response to the inquiry about 1881 East Ave, it is 378 square feet aside, which is the existing size of the current one. So it sounds like the concern is not around digital. There's a concern about height and potentially a concern about size. So you've got a couple options. You can approve with lesser relief. You've got the introduction of other billboards in the area. There was some public feedback from Mr. Lembach about other billboards in the area. You come over here and you crest over 490. You've got, of course, the one we're talking about. You'll have the new one that was already approved, and then there are others in the area that I'm sure you saw when you did the site visits. So keeping all of that in mind in terms of essential character of the area, the introduction of going from 378 to 672 plus the increase in height, keep that in mind when you think about, is the request substantial? Well, when looking at the numbers, is it substantial for both size and height? Essential character of the area. Will the introduction of this be a change in the character of the area? Probably to the residential areas around it, the applicant offered testimony that it will be seen, whereas it's not now. There was no photo provided, but certainly something to keep in mind. They did talk about the benefits of removing others, which of course was part of their application. So these are just some things to think about. Does anyone else have any thoughts beyond that?
Did we get any feedback from the street that where the Argini substation is?
I did not get anything, no.
Okay.
Okay, anything substantial to anybody besides, we gotta
No,
keep this thing moving, so.
Yeah.
And I was gonna say, it sounds like we all agree that it should be some type of lesser relief. So perhaps we can just hone in on what the lesser relief is. Definitely height. Sounds like everybody is in support of the reduction from
13
not
point.
allowing the 13.5, but keeping it at the 10.
So the other thing to consider here too is this is the current height. Is it visible? Well, I think the picture shows it is. And keep in mind, if they're increasing the size, it's going to be this size at this height. So that's your other option too. If it's kept the same and you give them the additional size, but they don't get the height. So maybe it's a trade-off. The height and the size sort of play off of one another.
Right.
Matt, can you go up one?
Yep. Oh, sorry, I kept going the wrong way.
One
So
more.
this is the new size with raised 5 feet.
5 feet. Can you do raise 10?
It doesn't even look like it's that much of a difference. Matt,
Yeah,
if you,
Joe. Sorry, LaShawn.
no, go ahead.
Yeah, Joe, I think after, really looking at it, I mean, this is really the only thing I have to tell. I think just raising it 5 feet will accomplish what they want to accomplish without being burdensome on I would say the current landscape looking out. I'm fine with just raising it 5 feet and giving them the size and the digital.
Yeah, I could support that.
I agree. That was my first thought as well.
Lorraine,
All right.
or your thoughts? Could you support that?
What? Are you talking to me?
Yep. We just want.
Yeah, I can support that. Yeah, because I don't really see any, it's just an increase to 3.5 that I don't agree with. And anything below that, I'm fine with. So
Okay.
5 works.
And you'd want to keep in mind, this would be lesser relief and on condition that the other 7 existing advertising billboard structures
Yeah.
totaling 11 sign faces be removed.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And the additional conditions that, that you've imposed every other time about the duration of the message, the brightness, the no
Right.
special effects, all that stuff. You're good with that as well?
Yes.
Yeah, you want all those?
Yes, so-
Okay.
What
I would like
about
to make-
nighttime?
Can we have
We put
recommendations from the zoning office?
Right.
They make recommendations.
Well, the recommendation from us has been that it be, and I'm not going to use the term that Jim did. I'm going to say nits. That's the term for the brightness. So the state allows, he said 250. I thought it was 280 at night, but we are recommending 200.
Okay. Yep. We've done that with all.
And
the
that's what
signs.
you've done in the past. Yep.
Yep. Let's just keep.
Daytime 5,000, night 200.
I'd like to make a motion then to grant with lesser relief
And on condition.
and on condition that the 7 signs listed in the application get taken down. Do we want to put a time frame on that? What have we done in the past?
They can't do it until they have to have those down before we can issue a permit for this.
Okay.
Oh,
Done
good.
it.
I'll second.
Well, okay.
Jim.
So my
sorry.
my motion, no, just let me just finish the motion. The motion is to grant the digital billboard less relief in height to 5 feet, and the size, we will grant the size at 672 on the condition that the 7 boards come down and that they follow the standards that we've set forth in this from city zoning.
I'll second still.
Jim.
Yeah, I'm good. I vote
LaShawna.
In favor.
David. Is David back with us, Matt?
He is.
He's there.
He's got to
I'm
unmute.
good. I'm good.
Lorraine.
I'm good.
Cora.
Yep.
Joe.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well.
Okay, so that approval with lesser relief and on condition passes.
With case number 2.
Case number 2 is 725 West Ridge Road. This is the sign. So they actually have the attached signage too, which you all had indicated was just slightly larger than was allowed. And then of course the new detached sign.
I think the resubmission is great.
Yeah, I'm fine with accepting the standards of the applicant.
I
Okay,
am too.
Agreed.
Can we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the standards as written for case number 2.
Do we have a second?
A second.
Jim,
Yes.
LaShawna,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Cora,
Yep. Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well.
5 Westridge Road passes. Case number 3 is 1290 Lake Avenue. It sounds like this is going to be a hold. Question for legal counsel. Do we need to do a vote for the hold for 1290 Lake Avenue, or is it acceptable to say the applicant has requested it? And
Why don't you make a motion to, and approve the adjournment? Now, we don't have, we didn't really say a date, did we?
no,
What have
we didn't say another date, so we'll have to re-advertise for that.
Yeah,
which we will.
and the next meeting is probably too soon for them to.
It
do what
is.
you wanna do. Yeah,
And I just want to make sure the board's sort of directives were clear. You're interested in them meeting with the Maplewood Avenue Block Club Association based on the letters and public
And
feedback that
and
came
other
in.
community members just don't want to focus in on that
Okay.
neighborhood.
Can you also hone in, when are they if they're going to plan to have this temporary structure, they're not gonna have the 2 temporary structures on site, and when will they be getting rid of that second one?
Okay, no, that's a good question. And the applicant also indicated that they needed to meet with their board of directors, it sounded like, to more
Okay.
finalize a plan, so I can include that. And as you saw with Rockwood Street, when something is held, applicants get an email detailing what the board is requesting. So what I will include here is both meet with the immediate neighbors as well as the larger community and the Maplewood Neighborhood Organization on their plans, what's going on, and making sure that there's a working relationship there. As well as more info on defining what they mean as temporary.
And if they've developed, because it seems like they're going to be using it as some type of class structure. So how often they think they're going to build and rebuild the temporary structure as well.
Okay.
Just a bit more, just a little bit more detail.
Matt, one concern I had when I went out there is they built that thing on the curb of the parking lot.
Yeah.
And that just scared the heck out of me, that thing could just come right off the lot. And I don't know, can we, I guess my point is, there any way we can get a building inspector out there to look at that?
Yes, I can refer
It's
that.
a
to
safety
the inspection
concern.
unit. Okay, I will refer that to the inspection unit.
Matt, I would suggest is that we set some kind of deadline for them so that they have this information to us about what their plans are and when they're going to meet with the neighborhood association. And they have that to us by our next meeting in 2 weeks so that you can report back to the board. Otherwise, this thing could just sort of drag a lot.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I agree.
does that make sense?
Do you want to wait? Do you want to do the one in 2 weeks or the one in June?
Well,
I'm thinking by the time a letter goes out, it might be a benefit to the applicant to have some
June.
buffer to have it by the June hearing.
oh, all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that acceptable? Okay.
That's acceptable.
Yep.
So do we have to make the motion to hold?
Yep.
Yeah, based
I'll
on
make
those
the
items
motion
that
to
you all
hold.
just did.
Yep.
Okay. LaShawna made the motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay.
Jim,
Yes.
LaShawna,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Yes.
Cora,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. The next one is Matt's best
I got a
friend.
question though.
Go ahead.
There are 2 associations that we're talking about. One is called the Maplewood Avenue Block Association, which it didn't know existed, but the phone numbers and stuff, that's the paperwork that you read out. However, the Maplewood Neighborhood Association, she mentioned she's trying to get a hold of William Williams, no longer involved with that organization. I've been thinking upon myself to send an email to you guys and also to Ms. Tran with the name and phone number and the email of the president of the M&A.
Jim, could you send that directly to me? Because our code states that the neighborhood service center is responsible for the maintenance of the official neighborhood contact.
Yeah,
And
that's,
what our office currently has is the individual we provided. So if that's been changed, we need to get that changed across the board.
it would have
Um,
happened recently.
Pardon?
I said it would have happened within the last couple of months because last I knew Wayne was there. But in any event, and the reason I asked how long they have been in the neighborhood is because if you've been there since 2013, I've probably been in my house as long as that, if not a little bit longer. And the Maplewood neighborhood meetings have always been on the first Wednesday of every month at Aquinas. It hasn't moved since I've known.
And
So if they've been there,
still are. They're still.
so I don't, even if there has been change in leadership, that meeting has remained the same for years.
But these guys walked into a situation where, you got to understand Muno started that school and these guys are brand new to this thing, brand new, and nothing seems like it was passed on or generated. So they're just trying to get, the school working, it seems like. So I do understand the miscommunication from their part. You have completely all new administrators and all new leaders. So there's probably no communication structure at all from the past administration.
I'll send that to you tomorrow. The new leader is a female, and that way they should be able to make the contact. The guy who built that structure and the students built that structure. He came up with 5 things he said when he was talking. All the questions would have been resolved if they talked to the neighborhood. So that's important.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. Case number 4 is Hickory Street. This applicant,
We're holding that one also.
We're holding that
Yes.
also.
yes,
I'll make the motion to hold.
A
for a
second.
second.
Jim,
Yes.
Lashana,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Brian?
Keep in mind on this one, so it will be adjourned, but it's very possible it will be withdrawn because if she decides to seek a code interpretation, if she's successful in that, she won't need a variance.
Okay.
If she's not successful, whether she will pursue it by appealing the manager's decision to you, and then you will have 2 things in front of you. This may take a while. Let's just put it that way. And I don't know, this appeal, this variance application, if she decides to appeal the interpretation of the code, will be on hold for a very, very long time. So we'll see what happens.
My understanding, if she puts a roof on top of that porch, she wouldn't have to come before us, right?
Basically, yeah, then it becomes a porch, right? Is that
It's
right,
a porch.
Matt?
That's correct, but we're not there. The applicant was seeking to legalize what was there. In the very, very, very recent days, there's been some question about, she's had inquiries about the interpretation of the code, and the interpretation of the code is not the venue for the zoning board. The
Okay,
zoning
all right.
board would only see an appeal of an interpretation of the code. So we have a process for that. So we'll work with that
Okay.
No,
applicant.
it made sense, Matt, what you were, yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay,
Okay, we are up to case number 5, which is Westminster Road.
I didn't have any objections to this as well. Did anyone have any objections beyond what the standards are in the application?
No, he satisfied me.
Works for me.
Do we have a motion?
Me as well. I'll make the
I-
motion to grant.
Before we do
Okay.
that, I need to say something quick. I see the applicant is still on here. The applicant probably did more community outreach for his project than I've seen in a
Yes.
long time. So kudos to him. He worked diligently and notified me along the way. So
and so are you accepting the standards essentially as he has
Submitted in this
Submitted.
application?
in the application?
LaShawna doing it, are you doing that for your motion?
I will. You know, the only standard I ever really have, you know, some type of concern with is it self-created?
As you should.
So, I mean, I don't, Matt, I guess I would kind of.
That's the only standard you don't agree with.
Well, keep in mind the benefit, so keep in mind if, for area
So I
variances
think
only.
that we need to, you know, I think that probably would be a standard that we would want to have our own response to.
Okay,
Only
so-
because,
Yep.
you know, for me, the issue is all, you know, it is self-created. It's something that, you know, you inherited. So whatever our response to that is.
Yeah, so you can see what he said as why he thinks it wasn't self-created. It's because they built houses in a different manner in 1910. Now, I don't know that
Is not acceptable.
is is
Not acceptable.
I'm just
meets
being
that standard. Keep in mind that
Yeah.
the self-created standard is not mandatory for area variances. So that's so if you want to state you have a bit of a concern about that, you know, that might not be a bad idea.
So, you know, that's the one that I always
Yep.
have some concern with. So I don't support that response with my motion. So I don't really know how to adjust, you know, what do you adjust even though I'm making the motion to approve.
What we've done in the past is we just said it was self-created, but it doesn't outweigh the benefits of the other standards.
That
There we
sounds
go.
good.
That works for me.
Do we have a second?
A second.
Paul,
Jim? I didn't hear you.
Yes, this is a perfect case, yes.
LaShawna?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Lorraine?
Yes.
Cora?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well.
okay, motion passes for 155 Westminster. Next up for deliberations is case number 6. This is 8-14 Mark Street. This is the school. Tom Kisior is joining us, so if you have questions about the site plan, he can answer them as well.
I do have some questions as it pertains. I don't know if it's with the site plan or not, but you know, when he was answering the questions in regards to the whole design of the project, and how it's going to, you know, how they're allowing this variance for the school. I get all of that, but I definitely think some consideration needs to be made as it pertains to the plan for the busing and things like that. That's just realistic. And I don't think it was addressed, and it's mentioned 1, 2, 3 in 3 different locations of the staff report. And I don't know if that's something that we have to take into consideration, but I definitely know that when we look at the standards and we start talking about undesirable changes, you know, that's something that is going to impact the neighborhood. I'm all for the school. I would love to see a new school, but I definitely think thought should go into the logistics like that, because those are issues that have come up with other sites, other schools specifically when they're in the city.
Let me ask you a question about that, LaShawna. This is where I disagree just a little bit.
Okay.
Aren't we looking at setbacks and that's all we can rule on?
Yep. Isn't that right?
Yeah,
So,
that's
setback, I
And
don't-
lot coverage as
I thought it
well.
was number 3.
exactly.
I can jump in for 1 second quickly on the buses though. So they do have a bus stacking plan that was kind of a concern early on. Monroe County Department of Transportation worked with them on that. They also went to the city's traffic control board, and they also are working with the fire department kind of a emergency management, access to the school while still having buses stacked. So it's definitely been on their mind, and it was part of the review and the process.
I thought it specifically said number 3, which are the variances that we're dealing with specifically.
Yeah, it is. She was just gathering some additional
Oh, no,
information
but,
about.
you know, what I mean, you know, whatever. I understand, but you know.
Okay. So the things you are looking at, so you're looking at a lot coverage variance. So required is 50. Addition with the proposed addition would have a lot coverage of 70%. And then you're looking at a side yard setback, and you are looking at the rear yard setback and then building height. So it is obviously, let me get to the correct case here. My apologies.
I think
I just like to see other designs of what they, you know, what they're proposing. It seems like they've, and I don't know if, you know, what was put in with any other review boards. But it does look like it's pushing that location to almost to its max. And what other options are there?
Until
you know,
go ahead, Lorraine.
I just have to say, I think because it's an urban environment with limited, you know, space involved, which is typical of urban environments like that in a development, you know, I think we have to be practical and realistic about what they actually can do. And I'm not sure monetarily or financially or whatever, you know, we can propose something that's so far out of the limit of what they're doing. And you have to, I think you have to consider the urban landscape. And I think that's very relative in his explanation. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I'm definitely very aware about the urban setting when it comes to school, considering the fact that I live right down the street from one. So I'm definitely conscious about it. But I also know that one of the things when the school district did this whole modernization plan, that was one of the things they were looking at as far as how much they were maximizing like the building that was actually on the actual land. And so, and those are things you can't, you know, literally use up the actual lot size with the entire building. And that's what they're doing.
You know, I understand that, LaShawna, and I almost agree with you.
So that's just where I stand.
Oh, no, I totally understand that. But what I'm saying is that the point here and task here is to simply look at the variance. I mean, that's considering the whole picture, right? And I totally agree with you. But, you know, I think, I don't know, I just think right now it's.
I'm gonna jump in here real quick. So to the point about you know, the buses and the overall project. So of course you guys are looking at lot coverage and setbacks. Lot coverage and setbacks speak to the size of the building. So what that means is it speaks to sort of what you're describing, which is the scale of the project. That being said, the applicant offered testimony that the need for it was because they are this building, the addition is going to be used for a cafeteria, a gym. So it sounds like the applicant offered testimony that the need to request the variances is because the part of the building that needs the construction are items that are larger scale. It's not predominantly classrooms, it's predominantly gym, it's predominantly cafeteria. All of that being said, there are lot coverage is 50% and they're at 70%. So keep that in mind. I think the site plan they showed sort of made it look like it was more than 70%, but when you actually do the calculation, it's 70. And I'm going to scroll down to that now.
And one additional thing is the southern lot is not included in the coverage calculation. So there's a huge green space right across the street because there's two properties. You know, we're calculating and it's not meeting in the northern lot.
Do you actually know if they're going, their plans of, are they actually going to do something with that green space? Just curiosity, my own curiosity.
With the southern property?
Yes.
Yeah, they want to use the green space for like gym classes and things like that. They have a long-term plan to purchase more property and to maybe have some sports fields, but that's not part of this
Right.
project, but it's kind of where they're trying to go.
Yeah, I know. Thanks, appreciate that, Tom. So how's everyone feeling? Does anyone have, let's go through the standards for this one, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. So the benefit to the applicant outweigh any detriments to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood. So, state the benefit, and then we can talk a little bit about potential detriments or impacts. I think the benefit is clearly stated, both by the applicant as well as the public feedback that you all received. You received some public feedback about the school expansion. So any potential detriments to the health and safety of the neighborhood?
Tyrese,
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Did you mention during the hearing how it butts up to those houses? To that, isn't there a house like directly? Am I thinking about this one? Help me out here.
Yeah, it is that house right there that's gonna butt, right? I think that it's gonna be right up against that. I wanted to ask the question, but I didn't want to get nitty gritty with civil guys about the landscaping, about what type of landscaping they were gonna have there for that home. Because it's gonna be pretty intrusive on those neighbors. I mean, when I went by, the kids who lived there were playing right in the street there
Same.
with a basketball court. So it's gonna be definitely intrusive for them and a change for them.
And I think he mentioned that there was some vacant property over there, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be vacant forever. So unless they plan to purchase that property, and then, I don't think we can depend on that being vacant. And
Well, I think it might actually, the goal would be to make it theirs.
okay.
There is a significant amount of city-owned land in the area. And so this property is actually close to the property line, but they have set back their building by, I'm just trying to clarify before I, 12-foot setback is being proposed along the eastern property line. So this is the eastern property line here. So this is actually a 12-foot setback from the property line, and then any distance from the house there. And you know what I don't know, Tom, do you know if this is actually a house still, or is this a?
That I do believe there's a house there. Yep.
There is still a house there. Okay, I wasn't sure if there was still a house there. So this is 12 feet here. It looks like they pushed the building a little bit further to the back because obviously the structures on this have the buffer of their backyard. So they were able to provide the additional building here as opposed to here, which allows for additional buffer on the east side.
If we didn't go for what they have proposed, what would you suggest that they do? I guess that would be my question.
Lorraine, you're talking about modifications?
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
specific.
my suggestion to them would be go back to the drawing board and bring these back. I'm not going to tell them what to do. Go back to the drawing board. They're civil engineers and they're engineers. They can go figure it out. I'm not going to tell them. I would go tell them some different ways, and I would suggest to them some different ways to, maybe they may not get it into code, but how can they reduce that lot coverage that you get it closer to the 50%? I know they may not get it there, but how can they provide reductions? I'm not going to tell them. They're engineers. They're smart guys. They can figure it out. So that's just a suggestion. I'm not saying, I'm just, it's not for us to say, but they're smart engineers. They can figure that out to get it closer in reductions. Personally, I'm more in agreement with LaShawna. I do think that there's some other ways that this site plan could have been conducted, but it kind of does tick me off with a lot of these applicants that they go through the site review process, the planning board, and they think that the zoning board is going to give them a rubber stamp. And I hope that the city continues to communicate to applicants that that's not going to happen when they come here. So I'm just frustrated because applicants think we're going to give them a rubber stamp because they've went through these processes.
Yeah, but we're not that board. I mean, I think we need to be specific to what we do. That's not our, I mean,
does anybody have a comment on, I just want to move on. Essential character of the area. Any comments? So the applicant stated there was no undesirable change produced in the character of the neighborhood or the.
So it's currently vacant.
Yeah.
Well,
So
Yeah,
I
I
think
don't-
not only that it's currently vacant, but we know that that area is being revitalized now too. So, I mean, just put it all into context.
I don't think there's an undesirable change. I mean, you're getting a brand new state-of-the-art
True. You're
educational
right.
building.
Yes.
So if anything, it's a desirable.
Yeah,
That's true, Joe.
it is very true. Better than what was there.
Right. So
You know, the next one
But
was
it's
as
still
far
in the
as
middle,
there's.
it's still right there by residential property. So all I'm just saying is maybe we don't see it as undesirable, but it definitely is in the midst of people's
Well,
residential.
And I
That's
think we
my
have to
thought.
take
And
into,
I
I
think
think we have to
shiny
take,
and new always isn't, desirable, because shiny and new can, it'll get old like anything else, just like the schools that are throughout the city that are falling apart. So I just don't buy that 100%, but I understand what you're saying. I just don't buy it 100%.
well, here's the other thing I think we need to keep into account is what Tom is saying. This is like a phase one of a master plan to acquire more city properties and expand the campus and get their green spaces, later down the road. So I think that we have to look at this more as, what is the whole master plan? And I don't know, Tom, you weighed in on that already, but I don't know what level of confidence do you think that they are truly trying to acquire more properties around us to make it more of a campus?
Oh, definitely.
That's
They
good.
wanted more properties and the city wanted to kind of see a more phased approach and have them develop and then come back. We didn't want to sell them everything at once.
Right. And I think the other benefit too is you're repurposing an existing building that's not even being used right now, right?
Right. Yep.
So I think it's a win-win for the city. I mean, what else are they going to do with these buildings that are up on the Hudson Avenue that are, what other users going to, come by and repurpose them and get them back being active? And let's face it, activity like this in a neighborhood is nothing but good activity. So.
And I think from the cover standpoint, you do have to think there's a road cutting two parcels in half. So
Yeah.
I don't have the total coverage of both lots, but if you consider the north and the south, obviously you're not at 70% anymore. You have a huge green field.
well, in this area, this section of road is predominantly used by the school, obviously.
So,
Folks, I also, you need to focus on the impact of the specific variances. Now, I know that there was some concern about that house immediately adjacent to the property, but that's an acceptable setback there, right? That side yard setback?
yeah, I would say so. I mean, it's 12
I mean,
feet.
it meets the code. That's not what the variance is for. The variance is for the rear setback. And-
Right.
When you look at the building, the setbacks are the opposite of what you would think.
Yeah,
So that is the rear yard because the front is technically on Hudson. So it doesn't meet those two setbacks. You need a waiver for both of those, or variances for both.
that one needs one where the hand is?
Yep, so it's a rear yard, so it would be 20 feet and they're proposing 12.
Oh, that's not what the,
Under 3, you got to go down to number 3, not in the chart in the staff report. So if you're
sorry,
in
I was reading the wrong thing then. Okay.
if you're on page number 10 of the staff report, which is page 5 of the preliminary site plan review findings.
Yeah, I was reading, okay, I was on 15, sorry.
Yeah, so to Tom's point, what we're trying to say here too is, while there happens to be a public right-of-way street, if you think about this as more of a campus is what they're describing, they likely would not even be here. The fact that there is a public right-of-way running through the middle of it is, the green space is obviously to the south. And this area has obviously afforded them additional parking, the obviously recreational space over here, while providing the addition that requires, or to provide for the additional space that they need, without actually having to completely find a new location sort of thing. So Other standards, so with regard to the specific variances requested, are they substantial in context of what we just described? So yes, they're requiring variances, but is lot coverage substantial when considered as a campus? Is the side and rear yard setback considered substantial when considered how they place the building? Is the height substantial with regard to how they place the building? So, there's no residential properties between Hudson and this building. So maybe the height is not as substantial because it's closer to the commercial area or the commercial corridor of Hudson Avenue.
Well, and then the required stories is 2.5 and they're 3. So I don't think that's substantial.
And so the actual number not being substantial.
Right.
I agree.
Any adverse impact on the physical or environmental conditions?
No.
I mean, other than maybe the bus traffic, which Lashana's brought up, but that's
Yeah,
not in
and-
our purview. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, keep in mind too, there's been questions throughout the hearing from a couple different board members tonight about the level of drawings that come in. The unfortunate part, you all often see projects when they are really far along because no reviewing agency in Monroe County or the city will review preliminary drawings. So oftentimes these drawings have had several, different iterations, or they've been vetted through different departments, but those departments won't look at it until they see a full set of drawings. So by the time it actually ends up here and it's been reviewed to determine what variances are required, it appears to be far along, and it is in a sense that so many reviewing agencies. I know I was sitting in the site plan review meeting for this project, and I remember the fire department, to Tom's point, talking about the buses and formulating a plan because it was a real concern from them from a public safety standpoint. So that agency, being the fire department, will ensure that they're meeting all of those necessary codes.
Doesn't that reflect on financing as well? I mean, those type of.
Well, yeah, it's a good
Yeah,
question. And I
financing
think
from the
I think
state.
larger scale projects probably do reflect a lot with financing and how financing is tied to them and
Yeah.
whether or not financing will occur without, certain levels of,
Right.
of drawings. I don't want to speak for the applicant, of course, but it is a good question. So thank you for
The other
asking
big
that.
thing is the secret determination. So we want to have full drawings and comments from all of these groups to make the secret determination. And in order to do that, we need these fully designed projects, basically.
Right. So seeker has to be done before you can make a decision. So that's why the drawings are at the level which they're at. So other thoughts, comments, questions, concerns on this?
No.
And
Did you have enough information?
I do have enough information, and thank you, Tom, for talking about the seeker determination as well, because that's a big piece of it. So
I'll call a vote, or I call a motion. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to grant.
A
Do I have
second.
a second? Oh,
A
Lorraine.
second. Mm-hmm.
Okay, Jim,
Yes.
Lashana,
No.
Lorraine,
Oh, yes.
Cora,
Yeah, yes.
Joe,
yes.
and I'm gonna be a no.
okay. So the motion.
That's 4.
4-3.
Who's the third?
No.
Can I
no.
pull the board
No,
members?
there's an
Jim was a yes.
Two.
Abstention state.
I need to pull the board members. Jim,
Yes.
Lashana,
No.
Lorene,
Yes.
Cora,
I'm gonna change mine to no because I was a reluctant yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Tyrese?
No.
All right, so no.
And David's abstaining, right?
I
Yep.
can't vote.
Yeah,
David
David's
can't
abstaining.
vote,
So we
so
got a
this,
3-3 vote.
it leaves a default denial. Okay,
They're
so a
gonna have to come back next meeting and address some concerns. Is there some additional information that they could provide to you that would be helpful?
I think a lot of the feedback came from Rochester Prep parents, which is great, but I don't think that any of it came from the actual neighborhood. So maybe to see a little more community outreach would be good.
Okay,
I know they talked about posting things in the paper and stuff like that, and I don't know if
Yes, they
that's,
did.
I don't know if that is where they're gonna get a response from those folks, but I just would like to see, for me, I guess, and I'm going to, like, what options do they have as far as with this whole lot coverage? You know, I know they indicated that the expansion is for this, I guess the only thing that's gonna be in this expansion is the cafeteria, the gym, and what else?
40 class.
I thought there weren't gonna be any classrooms in the expansion.
Yes, they are.
no, there are.
They did mention
There's-
some, they did mention some classrooms.
40 classrooms.
Oh, wow.
Are there, which of the variances were you most concerned about? And can you, or was it just overall?
For me, it was overall. I'd like to see a reduction in lot coverage and taking another stab at what we can do with those setbacks to make them less intrusive. I also like to see actual community support. I would say there was zero community support from this project.
That's not true.
David, you can't speak in. I'm sorry,
Okay,
David. you can't
but there
talk.
wasn't any neighborhood opposition either, so.
But I would like to see the community go out. I would like the community to go out and do so. I would like the school to go out and do
Okay.
some more canvassing.
But what are you basing that on? What are you basing that on?
Because
Well, I mean,
because every address was nowhere near the property. It was all parents. That's what I'm basing it on.
No, you're saying community, the community not accepting it. What are you basing that on?
I did not say that. I didn't say that. You misheard what I said. I
Oh,
did not say the community.
Say it again, because I didn't.
Well, I said what I said. I'm not going to repeat myself. So,
Okay,
Matt,
so-
well, I think that one of the things that would be helpful is, you know, I can't remember the other staff member's name in here, and I apologize. I want to say is it Tom?
Tom.
Yep.
Tom?
Yep, Tom.
Was talking about how this is, you know, supposed to be this campus feel and things like that. And so I would say when we're talking about the fact that they're looking into expanding, they're gonna wanna have that support of what's neighboring them, whatever that is, whether it's the businesses, because you're talking about, well, you're not talking about just the one house, because it goes beyond that. If you're talking about that their future plan is to expand this into some type of campus, you're talking about that community at large. So whether you know, you're going to be busing in, they said over 500 some odd kids, you know, just think about what that impact is going to be. And if you don't have community buy-in, that's not going to be a good thing, especially if you're looking to expand. And I know that Rochester Prep has a really good reputation when it comes to.
How do we know they don't have community buy-in? That's what I'm not understanding.
We don't know that they don't, but we don't know that they do either. And I think that's the point.
So yeah, in the interest of time, I'm going to wrap things up with this one. What I'm going to do is
Thank you.
address with the applicant that you're looking for some, because they do have the right to come back. It's not a successive application. You're looking for some community buy-in, specifically in the immediate area. So finding out if getting letters of support from immediate neighbors and or neighbors within the Northeast area where the project is located.
Okay.
And did you say, I think Teresa, you also want some justification for why the building needs to be the size it is, or or explore options of reducing it?
Yeah, I want them to, yeah, no to the first piece of what you said. I want them to explore a reduction in lot coverage. I know they may not get to the 50%, but I like to see a reduction of the proposed 70 that they're proposing with the lot coverage. I think that they can do other things with this design. I really just don't think it's a good plan, but.
But I'd also like to say, Tyrese, and if that's not the case, a little bit more about, what's going on inside of the building as to why they need that 70%.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that generic response that, okay, we're putting this gym, is it a state-of-the-art gym? Are they putting a pool? Or, you know what I'm saying? Those type of amenities that we know that are not in all schools that are city schools.
Yeah, I have no problem with the project and bringing these 500 students in, but I want to do it. I want this design to be better. In period, I want it to be better. So my issue is not with the school or with or what it's going to bring to the neighborhood, because it's going to be positive. But I want to make sure we do it right. So I want them to look at those setbacks again and look at lot coverage. I can't think about a future plan. I can only think about what's in front of me. I'm not even going to consider a future plan. I'm going to consider what's right in front of me.
That's fair.
So that's my perspective. I'm not considering any future plan.
So I'll work with the applicant on that information that you guys provided to provide other options, community input, and more details on the interior things. Okay, so we are up to case, the CDS Monarch project, which is 7, 8, and 9. They do need to be a separate vote as they are separate variances. Let's get started with proposed parcel 1, case 7. Initial thoughts, comments, questions, concerns about the presentation, about the overall project. I think the applicant did a pretty good job. I learned a lot from it, based even beyond from my initial interactions with the applicant in the description of how they worked the buildings as well as the site plan as you move from the Joseph Avenue corridor east in the project. Also, I just need to make note of this. This is a very large project, as you guys can see, and they have sort of a minimal amount of variances considering how many units they are able to do. The uses are not on the table. Everything was either permitted as of right or specially permitted that the City Planning Commission has already approved. So in terms of what you guys are looking at, it's in all honesty, a very small number of variances by comparison to the number of units. In terms of the parcel 1, I just want to make sure you guys understand, there's 2 variances cited, but both of them are attempting to get to the same thing, which is creating that street wall. They had a little bit of a difficulty because of the public right-of-way line, and you guys have seen this before, where the public right-of-way line doesn't easily line up with doing the building. So that's what you're seeing for parcel 1. Parcel 2, you're looking at a height, and then parcel 3, you are looking at the number of stories. It actually meets the height, but it exceeds the number of stories, but the actual height itself is okay. Does anyone have any questions on this project? Ooh, someone's talking. Any questions?
I didn't have any questions. If folks have any major oppositions to the first one. So we just want to accept the standards in the application.
Yeah, let me run through here.
Let's go through the standards.
So case number 7. So the benefit to the applicant. Do you foresee any potential detriments to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood? Sounds like it's more of a benefit. The applicant offered a significant amount of testimony regarding the need for housing in the area and the formula by which they use in terms of how they determine rents and the need for that sort of thing. So I'm going to say you guys feel it to be a benefit. Is that fair to say?
I personally think it's a detriment, but I think everybody else is of the opposite opinion of me.
I'm on the fence, Teresa. I'm kind of on the fence with you on that. But how many units did we determine?
This project is going to be such the impact that this is going to have 10 years from now is going to be detrimental to the
Okay,
community
we're not thinking of future, remember?
in such a substantial way. When I referenced future in the last application, Lorraine, because I'm going to get you straight about this, I was referencing when everyone was referencing a future plan, so a site plan for the other projects. So if you would like any explanation on what I say, please direct them to me. I am talking about specifically this. So you got it wrong. So I'm getting you right. You had wrong what I said. So I want you to get my interpretation correct because I'm not going to be disrespected by you. So let me finish my statement. You're disrespecting me. Let me finish my statement.
What you're saying then.
Let me finish my statement. Well, you don't understand what I'm saying. So ask for clarification.
I am asking for
Those are two different things. What I was referencing on Mark Street was when Tom and everybody referenced the future expansion. I wasn't referencing that alone, the school. Right now, I'm referencing this project, which is under consideration. I'm not an idiot. I know what I'm talking about.
I didn't say you were.
Let me finish.
Well, don't get on me either, Tyrese.
Like I said what I said.
Good.
So to finish, I think in the long run that, you know, there are different exposures that this project is going to have. And I think what the applicant was coming around to in all of the 3 parcels, to me, it was just, it works for the financials, which I get, I understand, I get it. And, you know, I'm not going to stand in the way because to be honest, the variances aren't significant. Like in other previous projects, the variances aren't that significant. If we're just looking alone at what the setbacks are and what they're requesting. So I didn't know if anybody else had any other comments.
No, I will state that I like the way that Tom explained the streetscape and how things line up. I like the fact that for this first part over here for case number 7, that by keeping the building at 90-degree angles structurally is much better than trying to angle it out. And also by doing that, it gives a chance to have some patios and some balconies on the north side there. So I'm in favor of this.
I am too.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to grant as submitted for parcel 1, case number 7.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Lorraine seconded. Jim?
Yes.
LaShawna? Did we lose LaShawna?
Here she comes.
She's there.
Sorry, my computer died.
We're voting, Joe put a motion on the table to grant for case number 7. You're muted.
I'm sorry, I got to take myself off mute. I'm in support of case number 7, so I'll vote yes.
Lorraine?
Yes.
Cora?
We're talking just the big corner.
Yeah, just that big corner one.
Can we just talk about the variance really quick? To where? Can we just go back to this one? Okay.
So one of the big ones is the corner setback. So there are 3 parts of our code that relate to this corner setback, and all 3 of them don't exactly line up with each other. And I think part of the issue was the irregular lot lines and trying to create a 90-degree angle building as well.
Well, and to add to that, Tom, as Jess testified, you also have living units on that first floor that you really don't want right up to the sidewalk. I mean, there's people's bedroom windows and living room windows or whatever
For
they
the
are.
first one or the second one? I'm sorry.
This is for the first case.
First one.
Oh,
That's my question too. Is the whole first floor?
No, The front corner has retail space. And then there are, if you look at the floor plans, there are apartment units on the south end along, my eyes are going crazy.
On Clifford Avenue, Joe?
Hang on a minute, let me make sure.
Yeah, could someone help me with that one too? Because I thought the
Yes,
first
so,
one was
so,
retail space.
yeah, so you look at page 9, you look at page 27 is the first floor plan. The entire front corner is all the community spaces, retail. And then the south and the east side of that building, you actually have apartments on the ground floor. So you don't want those units. I mean, if you're living there, you don't want your people like knocking on your windows as they're walking by.
Another thing was that they really wanted to have balconies on that side, on both sides of the building. So you can't exactly hug the sidewalk and then have balconies, overhanging the sidewalk. That wouldn't work.
Right. If this was 100% retail, then I would say push it up to the street edge, but it's not. Right.
Thank you for clarifying that, because I thought this was all community space, especially after when he said that, and I'm sorry for interrupting, but he indicated that the units for this first building was 3 or 4 apartments, and I did not think that this space that you're referring to on page 27 was actual units for 3 and 4 bedrooms. It just doesn't look, maybe this is just too small for me to read, but it just didn't look like these were units that people were going to be living in. So that means on the other side, there are units also on both sides.
Correct. You're talking about on the north side, correct? So there's the setback from the street for the units there.
Oh.
And then I think one other variance was the transparency, because they're proposing this commercial corner. They're required 70%, so they're a little short on that, and that's in that table in the.
And again, that's really a function of the units being there.
Correct, as opposed to a commercial storefront.
Correct.
So what needs to be done to correct that?
Well, they can't, because they're residential units as opposed to a commercial storefront. So keep in mind the transparency requirement is for a commercial. So when you think of a residential unit, like Joe said, if you have someone sleeping there or living right there, you're not going to want to have a 70% transparency along the street. You're going to have a reduced window.
And in their revisions, they did add some additional transparency. It was a little lower earlier, and then when they redesigned, they added some additional windows as much as they could fit in.
Does that answer the questions? Okay, so we have a motion on the table for this. Is everyone good with this parcel 1?
Yeah, we were through the vote. I mean, everybody had voted yes, and then we got to Cora. So
yep, we were through the vote with everyone. Yes. So Cora. We still have Cora.
Sorry, yes.
Yes. Okay. And I think we are up to Joe.
Yeah, I'm a yes. I made the motion, so I better say yes.
That's true.
I know I did actually.
And I'm going to be a no.
Carries as a no. Okay, so the motion carries 6-1.
No, 5-1, right?
I'm sorry, 5-1, correct.
And 1 abstention.
It is 5, and I wrote 5, but said 6. With one abstention, yes. Okay, so next case is number 8, tied to this project. Are there questions about this? This is the step down, as the applicant had described during the testimony. So in terms of the site plan, they had placed the building, the 4-story building, and then one of the all residential buildings behind it on the middle portion there between Theodore and Mariah Street. Are there questions about this one?
Mm. Matt, can you just bring up the
Sorry, bring up the what?
images of the?
So this is what you're looking at here, and then one of these residential buildings would be behind it this way. So behind this building would be that green space that they referenced, and then this is, I believe, Theodore Street, which they referenced, which was the abandonment to basically be able to maximize their parking. Otherwise, the cars would be backing out into the street. So if they dedicate it as their own land, then that won't occur.
Yep. And once they did that, they were able to free up a little bit more green space. So that was part of the concept he was talking about, switching the parking around a little bit. And that was part of that.
So that was able to maximize that.
These are right on the street. Those are the entrances, right in directly into the apartments, or?
You're talking about on the Tommy, do you know if the entrances are right here?
I am looking right now.
Okay. Is this building 2?
Yes, they are.
Looks like it.
2 of them are.
Cora is page 26.
Page 30, page
28, I think.
28, okay.
Oh no, but for Cora, the floor plan is on page 20.
Yeah, the floor plan. So the rendering is 28. The floor plan is 26. So this is that layout. So keep in mind, because this is a major corridor, this would have been designed to establish a street wall through here. As we talked about, sort of a continuous building line as you transcend the street through here.
Yeah, so there's no entrances directly off of the street for this building.
Yeah, so there's a front and a back. So all the units facing the street have entrances. And then there's additional units facing the rear with a center corridor in the middle of the building.
No, but those are just doors out to their patios, aren't they? Because you come in on the east side of the building on page 26, and you go down the corridor to your unit, and then these go out to the private patios, these little.
But not on the ground floor.
Yeah.
On those two.
So if you look at page 26, that's the floor plan of this building. And those are small porches off of the living rooms, those doors.
Oh, yeah.
Page 26 is the residential building behind.
Oh, it is, okay. I thought I heard somebody say that was this one.
This one here would be the residential unit behind. This
sorry.
are these where there's behind.
Okay,
So this is the residential building.
apologize, Tom.
This is the building we are discussing here. And they have, other questions, thoughts? So I'm gonna, are there concerns with the project?
I'll make the motion to grant.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Matt, did you have all the information you needed for the standards?
Yeah, give me 1 second. So we have a motion and a second. Can we poll the board?
Yep. Jim,
Yes.
Lashana,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Yes.
Cora,
No.
Joe,
Yes.
and I'll be a no as well.
So this motion carries 4-2.
Come here.
Okay, one more case connected and directly tied to this project is case number 9. Any questions on this one? This is parcel number 3, the far most eastern parcel. I'm gonna try to pull up a site plan.
These are the townhouses?
Yeah, these are strictly the residential buildings. And this variance is interesting because this variance is strictly just not the height of the building, but the number of stories. So the code provides that for residential uses, the maximum building height for a principal use or structure be 2.5 stories, not to exceed 35 feet. the proposed buildings of 3, 5, 6, and 7. So the 4 on this parcel and the previous one, they're 3.5 stories, but they're at a total height of 33 feet. So they actually meet the height requirement. The way the code is worded, though, you're supposed to technically meet both, but that of course speaks to floor height from each finished floor to the top of the ceiling. So
Where the 4-bedroom units are? Is that what, is it where they're getting mixed in? Oh, it doesn't matter.
I don't know the number of bedrooms on these. If you give me a second, I will check.
Yeah, I think each building has 1 or 2 4 bedrooms, but I can check too.
No, I mean, I guess it doesn't, I don't know. My concerns are what I kind of voiced at the hearing about the lack of green space and I mean, Tyrese mentioned the safety of walking across these streets and parking the green space and the use of retail space, but I don't know if that's within the scope or within.
Yeah, so those things are, yeah, that would be a larger project conversation. This last variance now is nothing to do with that. This is strictly just the additional, basically the additional floor, but no additional height.
Right.
So a fairly minimal standard, I will say, considering the scale of the project. Are there other questions or concerns? How do people?
That works for me.
I'm sorry, who said that?
Me, Lorraine.
I'm gonna make a motion to grant.
Do we have a second?
Second, I'll second.
Okay. We'll go through the roll.
Having trouble. Are we going through? We're going to start with Jim.
Yep. Jim,
Yes.
Lashana,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Yes.
Cora,
Yeah.
Joe,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well.
Okay. So that motion passes 6-0 with 1 abstention on that. And that is the last case. So that concludes the May 7th, 2020 Zoning Board of Appeals hearing. Thank you to everyone for both attending and everyone viewing. That'll be the conclusion of this. The next Zoning Board of Appeals hearing will be Thursday, May 21st.
How many cases we got?
Yeah, how many?
There are 10 cases on the agenda.
Plus possibly a layover from this one, right?
No, because I'll have to re-advertise for that, so it wouldn't be any additional ones.
Doing the
Yeah, so I'll speak with you all about that. So we are all set. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Anna?
Yes, I'll stop streaming.
Thank you.